From what I've heard, the huge influx in arrivals over the past couple of years of asylum seekers has already overwhelmed the facilities that we're building at Manus Island and Nauru. If you are elected and you become the Minister for Immigration and Citizenship, will you build more detention centres?
Well, what our policies are designed to do is stop the boats coming in the first place.
Sure.
But we will be left with a legacy of somewhere of up to and maybe more of 20,000 people who would be in the system, most of which, virtually all of which, would be in Australia, whether on bridging visas or in detention facilities across Australia. And so that is a legacy that we're going to have to deal with. Now, then there's the issue of those who may seek to come if we're elected, and we have clear plans for them, notably all offshore processed. Temporary protection visas is the best outcome you could possibly hope to get if you are found to be a refugee, but most importantly and first and foremost, turning back where it's safe to do so.
Last week we had a caller, Kathy. She was an Australian woman living in Colombo in Sri Lanka. Her husband, who we also spoke with a day later, is a Sri Lankan. She said that in her opinion, based on talking to people over there, that most of the refugees, the Tamils coming from Sri Lanka, were no longer facing persecution, that they just wanted a better life, which is understandable, that they would pay people smugglers between $5,000 and $10,000 to come to Australia, and they were convinced that if they got here, they'd be given welfare of, I think, $400 or $500 a week, and they could pay back their loan to the people smugglers. Do you think we need to do more to explain to those sorts of immigrants, if you like, that this is not the way the system works?
Well, I was in Colombo myself only about 4 weeks ago with Julie Bishop and Michael Keenan, and we were looking at that very question. And you have to ask yourself this. India is 30 kilometres away, and it's almost a walk at low tide. Why are people taking a 1 million rupee 3,000 kilometre journey to Australia when safety, if safety is what they're seeking, is only 30 kilometres away? And so the impression I formed, certainly while I was there, that choice to come to Australia as opposed to Tamil Nadu, 30 kilometres away, where the UNHCR provides support and helps people who are in that situation, can only come down to economic and lifestyle issues. And that was certainly the advice we were getting when we were there as we moved around. Now, what has worked in Sri Lanka is something we finally got the government to do, and that is to send people back. Now, since they've been sending them back after a pirate boat tried to get to Australia with those people on it, we put the pressure on the government. They finally relented and said, no, you're going straight back. And then they've done it with hundreds since. Guess what? The boats stopped coming. If you send people back, the boats stop coming.
In terms of the number of asylum seekers, we would admit the number used to be capped annually at around about 13,500, I think it was. Last year, the Gillard government lifted it to around 20,000. I think that was a deal done with the Greens. Would you change that number if you're lucky enough to win government later on this year? Well,
there are reasons for having smaller and larger programs for the humanitarian program. None of them have to do with stopping boats. And our view is that 13,750 is the appropriate figure, and that's what we would run our program at. But not one of those places, not one, will go to a person who has come illegally on a boat. Now, of the 20,000 places that Julia Gillard is offering, places go to people who come by boat. And I can guarantee you this year there will be less than 13,750 visas that go to people who haven't come on boats.
So the sorts of people who are in those giant refugee camps in Africa, for example, who are waiting patiently in a queue.